Oh, you're.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started if everybody's ready. If you guys would like to come to the front, fill in some chairs if you'd like. Thank you so much. The University of Arkansas at Little Rock would like to thank you all for being here today for this very important and powerful conversation. My name is Christine Jones, and I'm the past chair of the Racial Barriers Committee at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. And today, along with our sponsors, the University of Arkansas at Little Rock and UALR-Downtown, the Racial Barriers Committee presents this panel on lynching in the South. The Racial Barriers Committee advocates for racial equity and works to eliminate discrimination and stereotypes for all students across the UA Little Rock system. As such, we brought the National Day of Racial Healing events to the university campus for the first time last year, and we're very excited to bring them back to campus this year. And we're already looking ahead to the events for 2024. We'd like to take this time to thank all of the entities that came together to make this panel a reality. Dr. Wiebelhaus-Brahm for bringing the idea of this panel to the Racial Barriers Committee for the National Day of Racial Healing activities. The Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement for being so willing to bring the Arkansas chapter of Coming to the Tables practices into this listening session and panel, and to all of the facilitators from the Clinton School of Public Service who are here to assist with this evening's activities. This evening wouldn't be possible without the hard work and dedication of all of you, so thank you. In the past few days, the RBC has noticed many derogatory comments aimed at this particular panel for many people who don't believe that the topic of lynchings is relevant any longer and that we are just reopening old wounds. However, the scars left by these traumatic events still linger in the minds and hearts of the Black community far and wide, not just in Arkansas and not just in the South. Therefore, tonight in this room, we will attempt to heal some of those scars. I'd like to also mention, because this is such a heavy subject, should any of our UA Little Rock participants feel the need, we have members of the UA Little Rock Counseling Center here with us this evening to address anything you may want to discuss after the presentation. Our panel moderator today, Dr. Joseph Wiebelhaus-Brahm, is a political science professor in the School of Public Affairs at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, and is the author of 3 books and over 24 articles and book chapters related to how societies address histories of violence and repression. He studies the politics of memory and justice anywhere from Arkansas to Uganda, and we're so pleased that he's agreed to be our moderator for tonight. But before we get to the panel, I'd like to introduce Clarice Abdul-Bey of the Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement to say a few words about this evening's program.
Thank you, Christine. I really appreciate all of your hard work and effort. Thank you for being a partner. Thank you for being a stakeholder. Thank you for coming to all of the meetings and really trying to coordinate and make things happen with all of the organizations involved. So thank you to UA Little Rock again, UALR-Downtown, UA Clinton School of Public Service, all of our wonderful new and old facilitators. We appreciate you. Thank you again, the Racial Barriers Committee. And also thank you to the APJMM Pulaski County Community Remembrance Project and From Noose to Needle, Arkansas, which is an organization that APJMM works with the 8th Amendment Project to basically look at the history and the issues of the lynching, mass incarceration, and the history of lynching, and that through line connection that lynching and the death penalty has. So we also want to thank Edith McClinton Ware, who is an ancestor. She is the woman and community member in which this radio drama is created for. This was a story of her life, as her parents' life, her great-grandfather's life, as a child and as a citizen of the state of Arkansas. So I want to acknowledge her family, and also acknowledge the ancestors and those who have, in the state of Arkansas, there are 493 documented victims of racial lynching, terror lynching in the state of Arkansas. And so for us, we strive to honor those victims and their families and the communities that were destroyed. And so I want to lift them up, and also the ancestors in whom this work drives me. And also I would like to make sure that we are honoring the land in which we are on, and acknowledging the stewards of the land, who are the Caddo, the Quapaw, the Osage, and many other First Nations, excuse me, that are stewards and have been stewards of this land. And now I am going to turn this over to Summer, one of our facilitators. Before I do that, I would like to acknowledge Kwame Abdul-Wade. He is my partner in justice and in life. He has been very pivotal in the work that we do together, and very hardworking. He is a Clinton School, a public service student, and also UALR. So my daughter Dreamer is here. She's at the back. Wave, Dreamer. She's an intern with us this year, and we're really excited to have her with us and helping out, and have her learn all of the things, even the hard things that we're dealing with. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass the microphone over to Summer. And she's gonna thank you, Summer.
Thank you, Terry. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening to this interracial discussion on lynching in Arkansas and its effects on Black communities, which is part of the commemoration of the National Day of Racial Healing. My name is Summer Lawley, and I'll be helping guide our event today. My colleague Sky will be helping guide our discussion in this room. And our colleague Babatunde will be guiding discussion online and running technology for our online participants. For our discussion today, we're going to be going over the ground rules for our discussion. Dr. Wiebelhaus-Brahm and our distinguished panelists will introduce themselves. Next, together we'll listen to a radio drama about the lynching in Arkansas and its effects on Black communities. It's co-authored by our host, Clarice Abdul-Bey, and Almaria Jones, entitled Scars Brought into Focus, the Silver Screen of the Mind, Images, Memories. And then Clarice will lead us in a mindfulness moment. Next, Dr. Wiebelhaus-Brahm will lead a panel discussion and take your questions. Then we'll have a discussion in which you'll have a chance to share your own views on the issues, and then we'll close. So now we're going to go over the 7 touchstones to give us guidance about how we'll be together during this time.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Summer. I also, really quickly, I want you to right here in the corner, we have a self-care table before we get started. If anyone needs anything, a piece of chocolate, lotion that has lavender in it, a tissue, there are books, there are things there. There's also mental health resources there. So we do have a self-care table. If you need to take a break and go to the table, please help yourself. Thank you.
Awesome. So Sky and I will go over the 7 touchstones. I'll start with the first. We will put them up on the screen. These touchstones we'll be trying to stick with throughout our presentation. So our first touchstone is we are going to start with guidelines for listening. So first, be 100% present. Set aside the usual distractions. Also, listen deeply. Listen intently to what is said. Listen to the feelings beneath the words. Listen respectfully when marginalized people speak. We need to show respect and compassion for everyone. In addition, respect silence. After someone has spoken, take time to reflect and fully listen without immediately filling the space with words.
Thank you. Touchstone 2, try it on. Make an opening for new ideas by trying them on for size. Give yourself the time to get to know them, to consider how they fit you. Also, when things get difficult, turn to wonder. Try both and rather than either or. When someone else's truth challenges your own, try turning to wonder. I wonder what brought her to this place. I wonder what my reaction teaches me. Also, allow for the possibility of multiple experiences and perspectives. Let both and create a larger shared space.
Identify assumptions, suspend judgments. By pausing to identify assumptions and suspend judgments, we can listen to the other and to ourselves more fully. Assume that no one present intends to harm others, even though the impact of another's speech or behavior sometimes may be to cause discomfort.
Now we describe guidelines for sharing. This is touchstone number 4. First, it is always by invitation. It is never share or die. You will be invited to share. The invitation is exactly that. You will determine the extent to which you want to participate in our discussions or activities. Also, speak your truth. Say what is in your heart. Own your truth by speaking only for yourself, using I statements. In addition, no fixing. We're not here to fix or correct what we perceive as broken or incorrect in another member of the group.
So take space, make space. No 1 or 2 individuals should dominate. When it's your turn to share, please limit your sharing to 2 minutes.
And please resist placing the extra burden of racial spokesperson or expert on anyone.
Finally, after the discussion, maintain confidentiality. Create a safe space by respecting the confidential nature of our discussions. The names of the people who say things stay here, but what is learned here leaves here.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
So we'd like everyone to affirm that they can commit to following the guidelines during our time together. If you can commit to these guidelines, would you indicate that by giving a thumbs up or nodding your head? Thank you. And if you're online, by giving a thumbs up or using the thumbs up function. And I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up function coming up on the screen up there. This gives us permission to step in and help the group stick to these guidelines if need be. Those here in the room have been given a paper copy of these touchstones. And our online participants, while the team day is putting a link to the touchstones in the Zoom chat. So if you need to refer to any of the touchstones during our time, during this dialogue, you can do that.
Now we invite Dr. Eric Wiebelhaus-Brahm and our panelists to introduce themselves.
I think that Christine did a great job of introducing these, but yes, I'll pass. Okay.
My name is Lancaster. I'm editor of the online Encyclopedia of Arkansas, which is a project of the Central Arkansas Library System. And I've written, co-written, or edited a few different books on racial violence in Arkansas.
What's your most recent guy?
American Atrocity, the Types of Violence and Lynching, published by University of Arkansas.
And I think I was properly introduced by myself, but I would like to add, well, again, Clarice Abdul-Bey, Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement convener. And if I'm looking for Edith Ware's daughter, which is Miss Joyce Williams. I don't know if she's going to join us or not. And then her granddaughter, Suzette Williams, I believe may or may not be on the line on the Zoom. She would be here, Joyce, Edith Ware's daughter, who is the writer of the memoir. She is in her 80s and she recently last year had COVID, so she's dealing with long COVID. And it's kind of hard for her to be in public, but we always want to invite families and bring them into the dialogue if they so choose. So I wanted to acknowledge them. And I also wanted to, I know I mentioned Edith, but I do have just this particular tattered book that I've been working from. This is not on Amazon or any place. This is her memoir, and this is what I've been working on, but I am also trying to wrap and republish this book for all to have and to read. So we're working toward that. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Now, let's learn about lynching in Arkansas and its effect on Black communities by listening together to Clarice K. Abdul-Bey and Amaria Jones's radio drama entitled Scars Brought into Focus, the Silver Screen of the Mind, Images, Memories. Based on the late Edith McClinton's memoir entitled Scars from a Lynching, this radio drama tells the true stories of the murders of Jack and Jim Ware by a white mob in Calhoun County, Arkansas in 1895, and the murder of John Carter by a white mob and the execution of Lonnie Dixon right here in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1927. Please be advised that the radio drama we're about to hear depicts acts of extreme violence and intense suffering. We remind everyone in this room that there is a self-care table off here to my left, and at the back of the room, we have 3 counselors from UALR that will be happy to talk with you. Thank you very much.
Of the Ouachita Foothills Youth Media Arts and Literacy Collective, with co-adapter and creative Amaria Jones, with special permissions taken from the memoir Scars from a Lynching by Edith W. McClinton. There are images of memories and experiences which from time to time, like stars, dart across the silver screen of the mind. Once in a while, one reaches out and touches the fine tuning. Then behold, these images are brought into focus. They are truths which cannot be denied and should not go undeveloped. They are art forms silently waiting to be wrought into existence, not to bring happiness nor sadness to anyone, but simply to record. The possessor of these images is the only one who can, at that time and place, impart that which he or she perceives. Therefore, should the urge to record loom strongly, it becomes incumbent upon that individual to produce and hopefully to share. Cosetta Gray Ginn.
Henry! Henry, put everything down and go home. There's going to be a lynching tonight.
Pearl, we gotta turn off these lights. We gotta, cause Pastor said there's gonna be a lynching. There's gonna be a lynching tonight.
There's been one lynching in this family. A lynching for nothing. If they come here tonight, one or two of them won't leave here alive. Come closer, babies. I need to tell y'all a story that happened to the Wares, your father's family. The Wares lived in a small town called Harold, Arkansas.
Located in the Calhoun County seat. Harold, it's about 5 miles from Hampton. According to legend, Hampton is actually where the lynching occurred. Harold was a unique little town where mostly Negroes lived, and most of the people owned their own farms. There was an abundance of wild berries and game. Also, the farmers produced enough food to keep healthy livestock. They only bought staples. Oh, staples like flour, sugar, and only went to general store for dry goods. In this southern town where its forest of beautiful pine trees and wild flowers, it is unbelievable that anything like a lynching could have happened here. My memory of this town, Harold, Arkansas, is one I could cherish if it were not for the pea patch. The pea patch that will forever invoke sad memories. It was 1895 when my father, Henry Carlton Ware, was 7 years old. A black man killed a white man. The names of both men are unknown to me. Most of the people who knew the names of the individuals involved in the lynching had passed away before I began really researching and writing. Their names are forever locked in history. But the names of my grandfather and his brother, William Jack Ware and Jim Ware, will live with the Ware family as long as it has descendants. For the purpose of this story, I will call the black man Joe and the white man Rainey. Joe, a simple farmer, accused Rainey of sleeping with his wife and alleged that Rainey was the father of his wife's unborn child. He warned Rainey many times to stay away from his wife, but Rainey continued to go across that pea patch to Joe's house. Well, early one morning, Joe came to the house of my grandfather's brother, Jim. He came there to borrow his gun. He told Jim that he wanted to borrow the gun to kill a deer because it was eating his peas. And every time he ran that deer away, it would just come back.
Now, my wife, Sue, know I don't make no habit of lending my gun, but I know what a nuisance a deer can be. There, it's over the door.
That's right, honey. I haven't had a mess of venison in a long time. Bring me some back when you killed that old deer.
Joe took the gun and headed out the door and assured Jim that when he killed the deer, he would bring the gun back. Bring that gun back along with some good old venison for the missus. Instead of killing a deer, he killed Rainey. He took the gun and stood inside the tree and fled. The authorities soon discovered that Rainey had been killed and the gun belonged to Jim. Jim was not at home when the sheriff arrived, but Sue was. And she told the sheriff that Joe borrowed the gun to kill a deer that was eating his peas. The news spread all over town. White men tried to find Joe. Unsuccessful. They formed a mob. Someone had to pay. Someone had to pay. A black man had murdered a white man. So they seized Jim, since Joe had used his gun. They knew that Jim had nothing to do with the killing, but they took Jim to Hampton's jail anyway.
Tie that knot. Hang 'em high.
Fairness and justice
Bring 'em up.
did not apply to Negroes. So it didn't take long for them to determine his punishment. He would be lynched immediately. Right before they were about to lynch him, someone called out, "Stop!"
Y'all go get Jack. We gonna have to lynch him too. Him brother's too damn close. We don't want trouble with them later.
Of course. This was senseless and cruel reasoning.
Senseless.
My grandfather, Jack was plowing in his field along with my father when they saw the mob approaching. Someone yelled, "We gonna lynch Jim." But we figured we'd better come and get you. and lynch you too.
Yeah, I reckon you better. 'Cause whatever you're gonna lynch him for, he's as innocent as I am.
And so they took him. They took him back to Hampton and lynched them both. And lynched them both. My daddy revealed. I was scared to death. Ignorant of what had actually happened. He ran home as quickly as he could and told his mama that angry white men came to the field and took his father away.
This is the law.
Recounting how cruel the men were. Repeating word for word everything they said.
Fair.
My grandmother, Molly, had been expecting trouble, but had no idea it would come to that. Oh, severe gloom fell on her house. She and her mother remained motionless until someone came and confirmed the lynchings. She had to start making arrangements for the funeral. It was the same for Jim's family. Daddy. My daddy, oh, he never talked about the incident. He only said the day of the funeral was the worst part of the entire ordeal. Everybody from Harrow and joined in towns were there. Cries roared throughout the entire city for a terrible day. Oh, a terrible day. My daddy, he could never forget how hard his mother and his grandmother cried. It almost killed his grandfather. Moses, where? It was a terrible day. Oh, but for many, many months.
For many months, nothing but terror hovered over the little town of Harrow, Arkansas. Calhoun County seat. About 5 miles from Hampton. Black men were beaten every time the notion struck an angry mob. The sheriff kept looking for Joe. They sent descriptions of him to the surrounding states,
Telling them that he had
murdered a white man,
man.
and that they needed help catching this nigger. Several times
the sheriff
would receive a letter saying,
"We have caught the nigger
that
killed Rainey,
lynched him, and we're sending the coat and hat to prove it. Just more senseless death because of ignorance and hatred, creating scars.
hearts that will
endure over many
After the funeral, Molly Bradley Ware came home with her face swollen from crying, her energy drained to a wandering state. She stood looking at her family. She looked at her mother, Melinda Bradley, who lived with her since her father, Tony Bradley, died. She looked at her two boys, Henry Carlton and Lang, and thought about the unborn child that she was carrying, her hands that caressed her womb. Realizing all of them were dependent solely on her now.
Jack's gone now. It's all up to me. Where can I go? This is my home. This is my home. Jack! Where do we go? If I go, I lose our food, our shelter, our crops, everything. If I go to another southern state, ain't all white people the same in the South? And I don't know, I can't go to the north because I don't know nobody up there. Besides, it's so far, it feels like another country. I must stay. I have no choice but to stay. My grandma, Molly's life had changed. It had changed from a supportive wife and mother to a hard, strict businesswoman. The day after the funeral, she stood gawking at 100 acres of land, a large farmhouse and a crop that was not yet ready to harvest. Immediately, she began making plans. My grandma Molly, she went to the field with some hired help and her 7-year-old son and finished the crop that her husband had started. Each year afterwards, she and the boys continued to harvest food crops. She also served as a midwife. Yeah, she served as a midwife, which was a great help financially. She even opened up a little store, the only store for Negroes in the community. My grandma Molly. Tie that knot. Hang
For
'em
many
high.
months, nothing but terror hovered over Calhoun County seat. Yes, continual occurring of black men being hogtied and beaten was just another sport for white men and mobsters. To flip the man over and beat the other side of him until the blood just poured from his limp, tortured body. This was sport for the white men and mobsters. Some of the black men never recovered from the beating, physically
nor mentally. Things got so bad. Jack and Jim's wives,
Where can I go?
along with many others, were asked.
This is my
Oh,
home.
they were asked to leave
This is my
Harold.
home.
But the Negroes knew of no other place to go.
If I go to another southern
Less than
state,
40 years from slavery, oh, gave them little time to learn about other places, especially, where they could be treated as men,
ain't all white people the same in the South?
could be treated as men.
I can't go to the north 'cause I don't
Oh,
know
no.
nobody up there.
Quite a few families left anyway, including young Carly and Betty, my grandfather's 2 daughters from the other woman, and their mother, along with Jim's wife and daughter, who went to Oklahoma. Oklahoma. One of Jack's uncles, he did not leave Harold. But he was later hogtied. Hogtied and beaten. Lord. Despite the suffering from the painfully inflicted physical and mental scars, he survived and lived to be an old man. My Lord. The lynchings broke everyone's spirits. My heartbroken great-grandfather, Moses Ware, he stayed in Harold until he died at the age of 112. Joe's wife and her family, they also stayed in Harold. Years passed. Finally, a white man who owned most of the land in the county said,
"Enough is enough. If you don't stop treating the Negroes the way you are, I'll ruin all of you. In fact, if I'd have been in town when you lynched Jack and Jim, it wouldn't have happened."
After he had spoken, the town settled down because they feared the wealthy landowners' power. Tension was soon turned to the progress that the railroad had brought into town. Sawmills and other types of mills sprouted up as well. People focused on how they could earn extra money. But by the time it was thought that Joe would never be found, the sheriff received a letter from him saying he wanted to surrender with the promise of a fair trial. Oh, a fair trial. Lord, he stated that he was tired of running, fearing for his life, knowing that at any time he could be lynched. Joe apologized for being responsible for the deaths of many men, and that neither Jack nor Jim had knowledge of his scheme. The sheriff caught the train the next day after receiving the letter, going to meet Joe and escort him home. Joe. Upon returning, Joe, He was a very nervous man. He got permission from the sheriff to buy an apple from the busboy when he came down the aisle. Joe persuaded the sheriff to allow him to use the pocket knife to peel the apple. The sheriff, he reluctantly handed Joe the knife. And with one hand, mind you, Joe cut his own throat from ear to ear.
Damn it, Joe! What did you get out and do that for?
After the train pulled into the station, my Lord, Joe was carried to the doctor. Before he died a few days later, Joe said to us, who could hear him,
I was tired of being hunted. They've lynched a lot of old colored folk. I was determined they would not lynch me.
Lord have mercy. When my mother reached this point of the story, she said, it seems impossible for all of this to have happened, but it did. I knew my mother was tired, and the angry mob was yelling up and down the streets. Some of the relatives knew of a few men who took part of the lynching in Harrow. As a matter of fact, one told me that some of the men suffered from what they had done. 2 or 3 of them on their deathbed kept screaming as loudly as they could. My father never forgot the day when they came and took his father away. He never forgot how afraid he was, how fast he ran across the field, through the woods to tell his mother what happened. She stood stiff as a board, as she and her mother gaped. Oh, they gaped at each other with terror in their eyes. I asked my father how much he could remember when he was 88 years old. How much he could remember about the lynching. He answered my question as he sat still, peering into space as if he could actually see and experience that day in 1895. Oh, once more. As he finished, I contemplated for a few minutes. Being human. being human, we remember. Not only with the mind, but with our hearts, nerves, and with blood, the blood streams that flow through the body, good and bad. The effects transcend from one generation to another. One generation to another. How different is life for the many fatherless 7-year-old boys? How different for the survivors whose fathers suffered from unnatural deaths? My father's life was transformed overnight from a boy of 7 years old to be equivalent of a man well into adulthood. No longer a little boy following his father around the farm, nor picking up chips brought in for wood or doing small chores. No longer this little boy. Now, he was a boy who had to start plowing like a man. After moving to Little Rock, we thought the past was dead. But it came alive. It came alive that scary night during my childhood in Little Rock. This was the night my mother told us about the lynching in Hampton. We sat there, scared half to death, listening to my mama. Oh, my mama was telling us the story. Not sure whether the mob would come down our street or not. Why? Why was a mob raging in Little Rock? Lonnie Dixon, one of my classmates' brother, was reason for the uproar. Now, Lonnie Dixon dated a friend of mine and he was from a very good family. His father, like mine, was a janitor at a white church in downtown Little Rock. One day, while his father was ringing the bell, he discovered a white girl's body. After the investigation was completed, they accused Lonnie of killing the girl. It was rumored that the girl was seeing Lonnie at the same time she was going steady with a white boy. When the white boyfriend found out, allegedly, he killed her and framed Lonnie for the crime. It was death for a black man to be caught with a white woman, let alone kill one. The law carried Lonnie to a safe place while awaiting trial. Safe place. Oh, that was unacceptable for the white men of Little Rock. For they wanted done. They wanted done immediately. Swift revenge, not truth. Oh, that was the number one thing they sought after. And so, They decided to find any black man and lynch him in Lonnie's place. The men spent the entire day forming a mob. As night approached, hatred was at an all-time high. Not every white man was involved in the mob, but neither they nor the authorities could prevent what was sure to occur. Many curiosity seekers followed the mob to see what was going to happen. We could hear the bloodthirsty mob 2 blocks away as they were yelling shameful and heinous words that seemed to be coming from the bowels of hell. A heavy pang fell over the city. On May 4th, 1927, the mob chose its innocent victim and came down the street, yelling like a pack of wild dogs. All the commotion excited a horse that was carrying a white woman and her daughter. Now the horse ran wildly down the street, and there was a black man named John Carter. He was on his way home when he saw the runaway horse. He leaped into the wagon and stopped the horse. Oh, the angry mob. The angry mob witnessed John jumping into the wagon, and what they do, misconstrued the incident. Thinking he was assaulting the white woman and her daughter. The men grabbed John Carter. They just grabbed him and drug him away. They paid no attention to her and acted as if they did not even hear that dear woman. John Carter was the chosen one. They took him. They took John Carter to the designated place. They put a rope around his neck. And, Lord, they hung him on the tree limb. Why, Lord, they hung him. Just hung him on the tree limb. About 200 men. 200 men participated or they watched. That's right. About 200 men either participated or they watched as the life departed from Carter's body. It just watched. They began to use John for a target practice because it wasn't enough just to hang him from the tree there. Oh, no. They had to use John for target practice. Any man who desired was given an opportunity to put a bullet into Carter's limp body. They took his body and tied his body to the back of a car. The mob wasn't enough. The mob dragged his body through black neighborhoods. Until they came to 9th and Broadway streets. The Negro business section. 9th Street and Broadway. Then they invaded one of the largest black churches, Bethel, A-M-E. The men took some of the benches and they cut them up and started a fire. Then they went into other businesses, searching for more furniture to fuel the fire. When it was hot enough for them, oh yes, hot enough for them, they tossed John Carter's body into this fire and burned it to ashes. Why? This mob spotted a black man who witnessed the tragic event, and they beat him unconscious. This black man was beaten. I don't know how, but fortunately, you might say fortunately, this particular man escaped with his life. Now, Lonnie Dixon, the young male who was accused of murdering the white girl, you know, he was tried and convicted just 15 days after the lynching of John Carter. Fairness and justice, it don't mean nothing for Negroes. It don't exist. Just 15 days after the lynching of John Carter, on May 19, he was convicted. And electrocuted on June 24, 1927. There was a calm, a particular calm calm after the storm. You know, the calm after the storm. Everything seemed to go back to normal. However, there were rumors about the local drugstore and grocery store owners all being involved in the lynching. Consequently, the blacks stopped trading and shopping with those stores. Some Negroes who could afford it left Little Rock. They left Little Rock after the lynching. They tried to get my father to go with them to Chicago, New York, or St. Louis. But even my mother and I begged him to go. Just go. But my father refused and insisted that he was staying here in Little Rock. The atmosphere was filled with shame. The atmosphere was filled with shame, disgust, anger, and uncertainty, and not one could escape it. Not one. All that had transpired changed my mind about life. I promised myself that when I was grown, I would leave Little Rock. No. If I ever had any children, they would not have to go through the same thing I had to go through. I would never tell them to stay in their place when their place was segregated. Oh, I would tell them that their place is a highly respected place, just like any other boy or girl's. Just like any other boy or girl's.
How long will your spirit dance? A poem written by Edith McClinton. How long will your spirit dance around the tree where they lynched you for the sake of cruelty? When you were aspiring for higher things in life, they took you from your children and your wife.
How long?
How long will your children dance around the tree which holds in its branches what you want it to be? A black man studying to be a doctor, then to care for bodies and help lift the minds of men.
How long?
How long will your spirit dance around the tree where leaves seem to whisper, listen, listen to me. As long as it takes for hatred and injustice to die.
How long?
How long will your spirit dance around the tree? Your spirit has been dancing for a century. The bark says, until love and forgiveness fills the heart, the spirit of these lynchings men never depart.
How long?
How long will your spirit dance around the tree which keeps haunting my memories. The wood grains say, until his spirit dwells around the world. Wherever his descendants are, each boy, each girl. How long will your spirit dance around the tree, where year after year your spirit hunts my dream, saying, they did not kill my ideas, my hopes, and my dreams. They will flow through my descendants like a mighty stream. This is not a new story, but one that has been buried in the fabric of time, in the hearts of men, women, and children, and often, like a haunted house, revealed ghosts in the recesses of the mind, connecting the noose to the needle and the racist and tragic history of the death penalty. A very special thank you goes to the late Edith W. McClinton and the Ware family, her daughter Joyce Williams and granddaughter Suzette Cannon, actors Amaria Jones, Frederick Webb, Shalonda Nelson, Stephen One Young, with supporting actors Aubrey Buchanan and Stephen Barnes. A thank you to Aphrodisia Studios of Performing Arts, with owner and creative producer Tim Anthony. Last but not least, a special thank you to the 8th Amendment Project and the Tide Foundation for their generous contributions and support.
Now Clarice will lead us in a mindfulness moment.
Sorry. So let's stand up for just a second. Let's get the blood flowing in our bodies a little bit before we continue. I know what we just heard was very heavy. And it is very necessary to have these very challenging and difficult conversations, whether they terrify us or not. The one thing I remember from my grandmother is what she would say to me is, no matter what, be brave. And that is what I intend to do. I want to lead you through this. You can sit down. Please sit down. I just wanted the blood to circulate a little bit more and for you to move around. I'm going to walk you through this mindfulness meditation that I was reading today as I was contemplating and thinking about what do I do after we hear this radio drama, this true story, this true oral story of Edith McClinton Ware's family. So this particular piece, How Loving Kindness Meditations Helped Me Overcome PTSD, was what I saw. And it said, sometimes forgiving works better than forgetting. So close your eyes. If closing your eyes is uncomfortable for you, pick a spot and focus on it. Take a few deep breaths. relaxing your muscles and your mind. What I want you to do is, after I do this, I have some of the same meditation on this table. So I want you to do this away from you. But I want you to imagine experiencing complete peace and perfect love for yourself. And we're going to say this mantra together. May I be well.
May I be well.
May I be happy.
May I be happy.
May I be healthy.
May I be healthy.
May I be at peace.
May I be at peace.
May I be free from pain and suffering.
May I be free from pain and suffering.
Bask in the feeling of complete love and peace. No, you're gonna do this. No, we're finished with it. You're gonna bask in the feeling of complete love and peace for just a few minutes. Now I want you to shift your focus to someone whom you're close to. This person can be a child, a spouse, or a best friend. Direct your love and gratitude to them. And repeat after me and say, may they be well.
May they be well.
May they be happy.
May they be happy.
May they be healthy.
May they be healthy.
May they be at peace.
May they be at peace.
May they be free from pain and suffering.
May they be free from pain and suffering.
You're going to repeat these steps. But when you leave here, I want you to do this with someone that this writer said, hey, I don't like the word. I use dislike strongly. So I marked hate out and I put dislike strongly. You're going to say in your personal time, and you're going to project this person, this entity, this system in your mind, and you're going to repeat these words. Again, they are on the table for you to take, but I want you to repeat them with me still. May they be well.
May they be well.
May they be happy.
May they be happy.
May they be healthy.
May they be healthy.
May they be at peace.
May they be at peace.
May they be free from pain and suffering.
May they be free from pain and suffering.
Thank you for joining me in this mindfulness meditation. I appreciate each and every one of you. You could be anywhere, but you are here. Thank you so much. Furonda is here. Will you please come to the panel? And I'm going to turn it back over to some board staff. Thank you.
I think thank you, Chris. Thank you again. And now Dr. Wiebelhaus-Brahm is going to lead our panel discussion.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for being here. My goal for the next several minutes with this panel is to explore a variety of questions about the radio drama itself, broader context, and what do we do? What do we do with this? I thought where we would start is to put the events that we just heard about in some broader historical context. And so I've asked Guy Lancaster to say a little bit more in that regard.
So first off, when we're talking about lynching in Arkansas, those documented cases stretch from 1836 to 1936. This is actually a little surprising it used to be the belief that before the Civil War, you did have lynchings in the South, but that those tended to exhibit characteristics of like lynchings in the West. They targeted horse thieves, murderers, specifically white horse thieves and murderers. But actually, as we've done more research over the past few years, you find a lot of lynching of enslaved people in Arkansas. So the previous scholarly assumption that before the Civil War, mostly white men were lynched in the South, and then after the Civil War, lynching became racialized, is false. You have 4 white men lynched in Arkansas before 1865, but you have, and if I recall correctly, about a dozen enslaved people lynched in the state. The previous scholarly presumption had been that slaves were not commonly lynched because of the value of their bodies and their labor. This is turning out to be false. After the Civil War, you have a lot of chaos and violence, and you have rampant murders of newly freed African Americans. We don't even have a real handle on that, on the numbers there. What's interesting is that after 1868, when you have a new constitution that enshrines emancipation and voting rights for African Americans, the lynching of Black men goes down. In the 1870s, it's mostly white men lynched in Arkansas. In the 1880s, you start to see, an uptick, but lynching doesn't become the phenomenon that we associate, we call racial terror lynching really until the 1890s. That's when it becomes almost exclusively racialized, and also the numbers just shoot up. And it's because you then have a number of laws that have been put on the books, like the election law of 1891, essentially disenfranchises large numbers of African Americans. So you have, where previously in the 1870s, 1880s, you had some pretty significant Black economic and political power that declines. It declines with Streetcar Segregation Act and other Jim Crow laws. So, one of the things you can see is that when African Americans have some modicum of political and economic power, violence against them decreases. So violence shoots up in the 1890s and continues through the early 20th century. It peaks again after World War I, when returning Black servicemen are regarded as a threat to the status quo. There's one man, Clyde Ellison, who was lynched in Star City, Arkansas in 1919, September 1919, who was a returning serviceman, and who, the story goes, one of the accounts goes, he was walking down the street when he stepped aside to let a white woman and her companion pass. The woman said to him that, down here, Black men step off the sidewalk, not just step aside. And he said, this is a free country, and that was enough to get him killed. So you do see, an increase in post-World War I lynchings. They decrease in the 20s and in the 30s because you have a lot more national attention being directed at southern states. You have, though none of them pass, you have a number of bills in the US Congress to attempt to, it sounds strange to say make lynching illegal because the murder of anyone was already illegal. They could have enforced the law and actually, arrested these people if they cared. But to provide a means for federal intervention in these areas. None of these laws passed. They're all filibustered, by Southerners. And, some of the people most involved in engineering the failure of these laws are Thaddeus Carraway, U.S. Senator from Arkansas, and also Joe T. Robinson, U.S. Senator from Arkansas. The scholar William Pruden considers them the two most influential people in scuttling anti-lynching legislation. So the last recorded lynching is in 1936 in Poinsett County. And after that, there are a number of murders, a number of civil rights era murders, namely the killing of Isidore Banks in Britain County in 1954. It becomes a lot more difficult to attach the label of lynching to some of these cases, precisely because traditional scholarly definitions of lynching always spoke to the perpetrators being multiple. You know, there being a group of people doing this, and you know, there's the kind of current viewpoint is lynching goes underground, as it were. Anyhow, lynching as it relates to incarceration, the death penalty. There's a case out of Spadra in 1881. A man named Charles Jones is arrested for having allegedly assaulted a white woman. He's taken into town, and that same day they put on a trial. You know, they find jurors, put on a trial. Within 25 minutes, have found him guilty, and they take him to a nearby tree and hang him. You know, this is a case that hasn't shown up on some inventories of lynching because, well, he had a trial. But the question is, you know, obviously that was not a fair trial by any means, by any standard whatsoever. And so if you're going to say that that was a lynching, well, how unfair did the trial have to be for it not to be, you know, to be a lynching versus, you know, how long did they have to wait before they killed them? How, you know, all these things. You ask these questions, and lynching starts to bleed into the operation of capital punishment. In 1909, the state of Arkansas passed a law, Act 258, that was perceived by some as an anti-lynching law, but really what it did was it allowed the sheriff, if there was a danger of a lynching occurring, to summon a county judge, have a trial put on quickly so that they could convict the person and, you know, thus avoid a lynching. So here they're using the operations of the state essentially to substitute for lynching. In 1924 in Crawford County in western Arkansas, they held a trial for 3 men who had been accused of assaulting and murdering a white woman. And there had been, it's an event, happened after an event called the Catcher Race Riot near a little black community called Catcher, that after this woman was discovered murdered, the white community went through and destroyed this, you know, what had been an independent black community, and then arrested these 3 men, put them on trial for the rape and murder, and 2 of them received the death penalty. But again, this occurred in late, like I want to say maybe December 28, 1923, the murder was discovered. They held the trial, you know, about a week later, in the midst of ongoing mob violence. And they used Act 258 to justify holding the trial so quickly that they were going to put these men on trial so as to avoid a lynching. Well, what this does is essentially make the state the lyncher. So, you know, those 2 men received the death penalty. So the operations of the state do blend in, you know, to the operations of the mob, especially when, you know, there are multiple cases where, you know, a man is broken out of jail at high noon by a mob, taken to the edge of town and killed, and the sheriff who was guarding the jail and the deputies and, you know, none of these people can have this mysterious and inexplicable ability to identify any members of the mob. So, you know, people in law enforcement are complicit in essentially allowing lynching to continue. So, you know, we shouldn't consider lynching as a phenomenon separate from everything else.
Thank you. And I actually, having raised that connection, I'd like to have Furonda explore that further, if you would. And earlier, others have introduced themselves to the room, so if you could briefly do that, and I'd like to comment on that connection between lynching and mass incarceration and death penalty.
Thank you. My name is Furonda Brasfield. I'm the Director of Leadership Development for the 8th Amendment Project. I'm a local attorney as well, board president of the Decarcerate campaign. I see some of our supporters and friends in the room. And, you know, there is a historic, as you just mentioned, there's a historic connection between racial terror lynching and the death penalty in our country. And just like you explained, the death penalty was offered as a more sanitized way to lynch individuals. It was rather than have this mob to come from someone and to have all of the stigma that's associated with this, law enforcement offered to step in and put on these farce trials. You know, 25-minute trial. I mean, how fair could that possibly be? For you to convict someone of murder and then take them to the edge of town and lynch them, or for sheriffs to just throw their hands up in the air and give free rein to their jail for a mob to come in and get someone. Our noted Arkansas lawmakers mentioned in historic statement that we need the death penalty to deal with the Negro problem in this state. And that's where we have been here. And I appreciate you guys creating and showing this attenuation between the Noose and the racial terror lynching that has historically taken place and how it has transformed into the needle and the sanitized version of what we have now as capital punishment or the death penalty. We saw this play out in 2017. It was a very horrible time in our very recent history when the governor set 8 execution days to be carried out in the matter of 10 days. It was set to start the Monday after Easter. As a matter of fact, and for the Christians in the room, you know how Easter and Jesus Christ was executed on Easter, but that was the plan. Originally, we started with four Black men, 4 white men that were set to be executed. Ultimately, we executed 1 white man and 3 Black men. And I state those facts because we have in Arkansas, we have a noted racial disparity in our death penalty. In Arkansas, an African-American or Black person is over 2 times more likely to receive the death penalty for a capital crime. We've got 2 individuals, a Black person and a white person, both charged with a capital crime here in our state. And the Black person is over 2 times more likely to receive the harsher sentence of death, and the white person is over 2 times more likely to receive the more lenient sentence of life without parole. And with the death penalty here in Arkansas, race can actually mean the difference between life and death. And that's racist. That's just fundamentally racist. And any practice that's sanctioned by the state and that's fundamentally racist should not be taking place. We have not had executions for some time, but in 2017, the first execution that we did have was of Liddell Lee. It was a Black man who was accused of a murder up in Jacksonville. Now, Liddell Lee had claims of innocence, and those claims were backed by his belief that DNA would clear him. And that is exactly what we were asking for at that time. We had hundreds of thousands of signatures from all over the world asking the governor to call off this plan, to test the DNA for Liddell-Lee. Ultimately, the courts denied Mr. Lee's request to have the DNA tested. And he was executed. He was the first execution in about 11 years in the state of Arkansas. Posthumously, we were able to have the DNA tested, and that those tests show that there was a third unknown person. There was an unknown person's DNA on the murder weapon. Information that we should have had before we killed a man. But my experience with the death penalty here in this state and across the country is that once you get that death train started, it's so very hard to stop it. It's like bloodless, like you would not imagine. And I had never witnessed it or seen how difficult it was to try to change the hearts and the minds of legislators, of our lawmakers, of our decision makers in this state, and to have those executions called out. So there's absolutely a connection, as you've already stated, between racial terror lynching and the modern day death penalty. And I would go so far as to say the extrajudicial killings of individuals, primarily Black men on the street by police officers is a part of the system that allows for life to be devalued and to be taken in a state sanctioned way.
Thank you. One of the things that I want to explore next, particularly, is to talk about the role of art in processes of dealing with the past and thinking about justice. From an academic perspective, the role of art as a form of justice and as a way of healing and reconciliation is something that's actually relatively recently attracted attention from academics. And there's a lot of room for exploration. So as an artist, I like you to talk a little bit more about that process and how you see it as a form of justice.
Thank you, Eric. There are many quotes when you've asked me, and I can't think of one, but I will say that art and music for sure are the two, for me, are the most powerful seeds to plant, if I could say it that way, in the hearts and the minds of people. They strike a chord of humanity, and they also allow a person to think about what they just saw, analyze it, pick it apart, unpack it, put it back together. And this, when you create art in a way where, especially if you're listening, you are able to then imagine and feel how other people experience things. For many years, advocates, activists, social justice leaders, and thought leaders have used art forms to change narratives and dynamics and history. And if to demonstrate is an art form, to protest is a form of art. You have the signs, you have writing, you have voices, you have music, you have the bodies of people, you have their energy, essence, and emotion there. That's art. And so visualizing, for example, we were watching this visual sensory added to this radio theater of this book, the life of this baobab tree. These trees in parts of Africa that are thousands of years old, They hold tons of water. They bear fruit. They are used for so many things, and it's symbology, really, if you look at our lives. And so it was used to help balance this very difficult conversation, that this very difficult listening session that we were having, and also to get you to think about the importance of the life of not just this tree that has been used for it's just, when I think about the use of trees and how they've been used for the as an accomplice of death, if I can say it that way. It's very sad because trees offer so much and they heal, and they have been accomplices for death. And so art is very powerful. The use of art will plant a seed that will grow over time, if not immediately change the life of someone.
Thank you. One of the things that I found quite powerful and meaningful about the radio drama was that there was actually relatively little time was spent on the violence itself, on the lynchings themselves. But what we saw most was the aftermath and the effects of what happened generationally. So one of the things that we'd like all of our panelists to explore is for those people, I think this is ancient history, so to speak, right? This happened a long time ago. This happened generations ago. Why is thinking about, why is focusing on this? Why is thinking about justice in the context of lynchings that happened decades ago? Why is that important? That tough question. Who wants to go first?
It's 2020. It's important because it's 2023, and we still have to say that Black Lives Matter. Many times you'll say Black Lives Matter, and someone will counter and say, "Oh, well, all lives matter." Well, yeah, we know that, and we know that the state in our system attributes extra value to white life, and that's why we have to say that Black Lives Matter, because you can see a George Floyd that's being choked in the streets, and no one can come to his aid because the state has the power to take a life. The state especially has the power to take a Black life with no consequence. There is a qualified immunity is I laugh, but it's absolutely not funny. It is a concept that essentially says that if police officers if they haven't killed somebody in this way before, then we're not going to punish them for killing someone in this way now. That oversimplifies it, but essentially that's what it means. And so while I was watching the radio drama, I thought, what a terrible story. There's no upside to these horrible things that have happened. I thought that it was beautifully done, or I would not have been able to sit in my seat for the amount of time that I had, because we live this day in and day out. You turn on the television and you see someone being killed in the street by state-sanctioned violence. They were frazzled. I saw a young man, and you almost get desensitized to it because you see people get killed every day, choked out. They're holding them down, they're tasing them, and keep tasing them until he just has a heart attack and dies. That story just goes on and on and on. But I think that this is so important because what we are seeing is just a metamorphosis of this horrible devaluation of life. It's gone from the noose and the trees being accomplices to the murder, the needle where we don't know who to blame. But, you know, we've got 3 people and, you know, they all put something in something. We don't know who poisoned the person. Now we've got firing squads that we're bringing back. And somebody's got blanks and somebody's got live rounds, so we don't know who to blame for that. We are even, some states are exploring gas chambers, reminiscent of the Holocaust, and taking lives in that way. Just however we can get it done, you know, just figuring out how we can, as a state, as a country, how we can take life. And so I think it's very important to continue to bring these things before audiences like this, to continue to show how these practices are morphing before our eyes, and some don't be fooled. You know, no matter how we try to sanitize it or change it up, or call it something else, it's still murder, and it's still state sanctioned murder. It's so we absolutely need to have these conversations. We absolutely need these art pieces that will make it even digestible, so that we can actually see what's going on. You know, this is a story, again, a terrible story that of people that just wanted to live their lives, and they were lynched, or they were murdered, or they were, you know, choked out by the police. And so I think it's very important that we continue to have these conversations, that we continue to talk about these things, and how state-sanctioned violence is ever present in our lives. It was in 1927, and it also is in here in 2023.
I'm going to sound like I'm off topic for a bit, but I promise I'm going to bring it around. Back in the ancient world, you know, they believed that the earth was the center of the universe, and everything revolved around the earth. All the planets, all the stars, the sun, all the moon, all of that revolved around the earth. But if you look at the night sky for any length of time, you see that there are certain exceptions to this. It seems certain things. One night they're going one way, the other night they're going backwards, it seems. And so this calls into question, well, how can we say that everything revolves around the earth when some things seem to go one way, then they go to the next? So they instituted exceptions to the system, called them epicycles. Said everything goes around the earth, but some things move in their own little circles for whatever reason. You know, so we've built exceptions into the system. Well, by the time you get to Copernicus, the Catholic Church asks him to do some further calculations so that they can calculate the date of Easter further out. You know, he gets to work, and, you know, he's still operating under this old model of adding epicycles into the system. Well, he ends up adding something like 99. He has to build 99 exceptions to, you know, the Ptolemaic model of the universe in order to make it work. And at 99, it falls apart. He scrapped everything. He had to, he said, we're going to start from a new perspective here. And that's kind of, I see that as a metaphor for kind of our history, right? You know, growing up, I was told a version of American history that emphasized the wisdom of the founders, and you know, we go on, we're going onward and upward. Progress is inherent to the American system. These lynchings happen, yes, but they're exceptions, right? They're these little epicycles. We can account for them. They don't call into question, you know, the major system we have. Everything still revolves around the fathers, the founding fathers, and, you know, the greatness inherent in the American system. Well, as you study more American history, you find more of these exceptions. And the question is, how many exceptions can we add to this narrative of American history before it all falls apart? I think it's falling apart right now. I think that's why there's so much pushback to this kind of history. Pushback, you know, everyone's going crazy about critical race theory or 1619 Project, or simply discussing, you know, Ron DeSantis, essentially outlawed AP African American studies in Florida. There's so much pushback to this because what we have emerging from this is a new paradigm. We're not there yet, but we have to have a new way of understanding who we are as a country, who we are as a people trying to live together and go forward in the future. You can't just keep building exceptions into the system and say that everything is all good and always has been good. The exceptions will eventually call into question the rule you're living by.
Okay.
I just sparked a thought that, and I appreciate those comments because the truth has been hidden for so long in this country. And now it's against the law to talk about the truth. And maybe in Arkansas, we had an executive order the other day, and in Florida. And there's this perpetual gaslighting that has happened for to African Americans in this country. One of the examples is and that highlights the reason that we have to have these conversations. We have to have these pieces. We have to have art that talks about these difficult things. I remember going to a Truth and Reconciliation event in Elaine, Arkansas. And they had people to come in and testify to talk about, they thought that the Elaine race riots had happened. They had heard stories. People were so scared to talk about it. And some people were, even though they were there, they were like, well, did it really happen? Because they keep telling us that it didn't, and they keep telling us don't talk about it, and they keep telling us to forget about it. So did it really happen? It makes you feel sometimes that, am I crazy? You don't want to play these race cards that are continuously dealt. You don't want to talk about these things that this very deep-rooted history. I mean, that is the history of this country. The history of this country is a racist history. It is as the history of slavery. It's kidnapping people and bringing them here and torturing them and making them work for free. That is the history of this country. And then once they are set free, terrorizing them, especially if they try to be economically viable and not have to depend or be exploited by people, then that's a crime in itself. And now it gives us the right to kill you. So I think that just re-emphasizes the importance of having these conversations so that people don't feel crazy. That they know that what they think happened and what they really know happened, but they're kind of scared to say it because people are going to criticize you for talking about the truth. It's okay to talk about the truth. And it's what we need to do in this country so that we can have in order to have reconciliation, you absolutely have to have truth first.
Last thing I want to ask each of the panelists to comment on briefly before I open this up for questions is what should we do? For all of us in the room, as we walk away, what should we do?
That's pretty loaded. It is definitely a question that is deeply personal for most folks to try to navigate. What should we do? For me personally, I doing this racial justice and racial healing work, the thing that I've come to conclude is that as a Black woman, a Native Indigenous woman in this country, that for me, because I did not create this particular system of oppression and racism, all I can do is strike a blow of some type of peace and some type of justice. But dismantling this system is something that I have no way of doing. My ancestors had no way of doing. They died trying to do that. And there have been years and years and history reported of us trying to undo a system that we did not create. And so, what should we do? I keep thinking about continuing to be speaking for me personally, continuing to be the loving and caring person that I am, continuing to try to make a difference in whatever ways that I can, whether it's through the art, whether it's through writing, whether it's through speaking, whether it's through giving out pamphlets, books, whatever it is. But as far as this system of white supremacy and oppression, it's a system that I dare not die to dismantle. I refuse to. I understand the heavy and the weightiness of trying to dismantle something I did not create. And so what I will do is, again, strike a blow of truth, racial healing, and transformation in a way that I can. Because I did not create this system, it has to be dismantled by those who created it. And those who benefit from it. So that's what I can say about what to do. It is deeply personal, and it has to be something that a person decides, this is what I'm going to do to bring about change.
I think building on that, I'd say find a niche. One of the groups that formed to oppose lynching was the Association of Southern Women for the Prevention of Lynching. These were often upper or middle-class white women living in the South who used the tools of shame and blame in order to provoke authorities into actually defending those people who were facing lynching. So if they had heard a lynching had occurred, they would write letters to the sheriff. They would, send someone to investigate, report it among their groups. These were white women at the time using the tools that they had available to them. I think anyone in any role or station in life can play a part. So I guess do some introspection, ask yourself what are your abilities and attributes, and what groups are out there that, what can you do? And, if there's someone out there doing that sort of work, team up with them. If not, maybe consider starting that group and filling that gap.
The question makes me think of a time in Hot Springs. I was at the Arkansas Bar Conference and just walking along, I think we were headed to lunch or something, and I saw a familiar face. And so I just sparked up a conversation with this guy that was walking beside me. And we started talking about what we did for a living. And I said, well, at that time, I was the executive director of the Arkansas Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. And he told me that he worked at the AG's office. And it dawned on me that every time I go to the Capitol to testify about abolishing the death penalty, then there he is saying, no, we don't need to abolish the death penalty. That's who he was, and that's why his face was so familiar to me. And I said to him, he said, yeah, that's gotta be difficult work. I was like, yeah, it's like beating your head up against a brick wall. I said, well, because you're the brick wall. But I think that's what we're called to do, is to resist and to challenge the process. Even if we thought we had a flawless, perfect process or system, it's still our responsibility as citizens to challenge that and to say, how can we make this better? And absolutely, if there's something wrong with it, how can we fix this so that this is not something that is an injustice for people days, years, months to come? And so I think that absolutely, we've got to continue. We've got to resist, and we've got to challenge the process. And if it's not working in the way that it should work, it's our responsibility. It's in fact our duty to speak up and to challenge that.
Thank you. We wanted to provide a few minutes for people to ask questions of things that our panelists have said. So if you are in this room here with me and you have a question, please raise your hand and I'll take an order. If you are online, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. And if you're, for those of you on Zoom, if your question is directed to a particular panelist, please name that individual that you'd like the question to be directed to. Robert, are you going to be kind of monitoring the questions online, or? Okay, that's a bit taxing for me this late in the day to do both. All right.
Hi, I'm Dan Reimer from the Baha'i community in the Lawrence area. Guy, I loved your analogy of the relationship between the paradigm shift. And I wonder if you've written that up somewhere.
Yes, it's actually in the concluding chapter of the revised edition of Blood in Their Eyes, the Elaine Massacre of 1919.
Great. I want to use that if I can. Get your license.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Hand right behind you. Hi, I'm Bill Kearns. I'm a teacher at University of Arkansas Level School of Education. I was thinking, because one of the first things they did, the mob was attack Bethel, AME. There's a long history of attacking institutions, values, ethos within the Black community as a continuation of lynching that's still going on. I wonder if the group can speak to that. The attacks on the Black church, the attacks on the very values, this deficit, this important. I think that's a very important piece that needs to be talked about.
Yeah, no, you do see that, and not just like there was a case in Garland County, a Black man was lynched, but the mob also burned down a church, and some reports said they burned down a local school. In Lonoke County, there was sort of an ongoing spate of racial violence in 1897, 1898, in which a Black teacher, D.T. Watson, was lynched, and the mob, told people that they didn't want Black teachers in that area. They only wanted people picking cotton. They didn't want people learning. So you see not only attacks on Black institutions, but also, elite figures in those, in those communities. In Crittenden County in 1888, there was, folks know now about the Wilmington coup d'etat in North Carolina, 1898, where, a Black newspapers destroyed, politicians are removed from office, and, it was a white power structure is reinstituted. Well, similar thing occurred in Marion in Crittenden County, Arkansas, 10 years before that. Using allegations in order to arrest and remove Black political leaders. And, they not only took those guys and, across the river to Memphis and just dumped them, they also arrested a number of pastors and teachers and other notable figures in the community and essentially expelled them from that community. So, yeah, you do see a lot of attacks upon institutions and attacks upon leadership.
Eric Babatunde has one of our online participants has a question.
Okay, is it a text? Is it in text form, or did they go?
Speak now.
I was just demonstrating to them how they will raise their hands. Just showing them how to use the raise hand function.
George West, former teacher at Central High School. I appreciate the summary notes of try to find a niche, try to approach your work in a loving way, try to challenge the language of the prevailing system of racism and white superiority and domination, Black oppression, when and where you hear it spoken, and have that confrontation with those who are speaking. In terms of a niche and an action, my opportunity seems small, and I would very much welcome. I don't want to pose a question to the panel or the community of listeners here. It seems to me that if we approach as one voice, we're a pretty easy target for being shot down or dismissed. But if we can find others who are trying to address a specific issue of this system or engage in a particular act, and if we can do that as a small and growing group, then we have more credibility and we have perhaps more leverage, and we certainly would have more ideas. So I would love to have a poster board that would show me where are the groups that are trying to address an executive order that bans the teaching of critical race theory in Arkansas public schools, and attack that specifically because it also is used as an excuse for stifling any kind of discussion of any kind of past history of racial violence. So my question, as I say, I'd like to put that question back to you. Where is it that we can find those groups that are dealing with specific issues? The Amendment Project being one such case. But there are other ways that this system is permeating and affecting lives, and I'm looking for a niche.
I'll start. I'm affiliated with a number of groups that are doing this work. One of them is Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement, the Arkansas Noose to Needle campaign, the Decarcerate campaign, and Decarcerate has weekly alerts that are going out during the legislative session to tell you about the bills that have been filed, our stance on those bills that have been filed, the groups that are working with us to help to combat those groups. There's Arkansas criminal defense lawyers are working on a lot of these criminal justice, criminal legal bills as well. The Arkansas Poor People's Campaign, the ACLU of Arkansas, are some that just come to mind at first thought, but I'll pass the mic. You guys may have some additional ones.
I think teachers' unions are probably buying this executive order. Looking at that, and teachers' unions and the ACLU. Just email Kwame and he'll find the right teacher.
First, you said you did not want it.
Run the guy.
Okay. I'll just use my moderator's prerogative and just say that I think in some respects, you're maybe thinking too big, and that there be much smaller things that that could be done that could make a difference that might be hard to measure, but just contacting your representatives and telling them that these are issues that you care about, or even at a more basic level, is having a conversation with, somebody you go for a walk with, or somebody on your bowling team. I went to this interesting event last week and listened to this audio play, and just kind of having these conversations, I think, is an important step. So thank you very much, everyone, for your questions. And thanks to all of you.
Before you go, there's a comment in the chat room that says from Evelyn James, it seems to me lynching was about interrupting prosperity for Blacks. Does the panel have anything that they want to say behind that particular comment?
I think there are a number of scenarios where that was the purpose, to interrupt progress, and not to just interrupt progress, but to do it in such a public and demoralizing way as to discourage others from pursuing that same level of progress. One, it's People's Grocery in Memphis, is one that I think of when I go to the Four Way. It's a soul food restaurant, but when I go there in Memphis, I always see that marker that they were prospering in Memphis and in an area, and they were competing with local white grocers. And that was obviously a capital offense at that time. So, they got a mob of people together, they killed the competition, and then they moved on, but it's done in such a public and demoralizing way as to discourage any other that would dare to pursue that same level of economic opportunity or freedom. To persuade them, and ultimately what it did is it drove people, and it drives people out of the areas. Just like they said on the radio theater, that people left. People are afraid. They are, and they know that they if they stay in this place, they are subject to be killed in that same way, or at the very least, they are going to be held to their possibility is going to be limited if they stay in this area. And that's a part of the reason for the Great Migration. But I'm going to pass the mic to the historian because I'm sure he can tell us a little better.
I mean, we heard about the lynching of John Carter, and that entailed an attack on the Black community at West 9th Street, which was a thriving, Black neighborhood here in Little Rock. I'm thinking the Elaine massacre was an attempt, an attack upon a farmers union, sharecropper and tenant farmers union. That in 1904, there was a case in Bonanza, Arkansas, which is like right on the Oklahoma border in Sebastian County, where Black miners were driven out of the area. These were people who had mining jobs, and at some point someone put up posters around town saying, they didn't want any more Black miners here, leave now, and ended up being a shootout in town that, drove all the Black miners out. And you see that throughout parts of Arkansas. 1896 in Polk County, local whites team up with white railroad workers, some of them foreigners, to drive out Black railroad workers. So you do consistently see attacks on, those African Americans who dare to enter certain industries, work certain jobs. And as I've mentioned before, you do see attacks upon, people in roles of leadership or people who do possess economic independence.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for that question.
Just really quickly, I do want to echo what Furonda and Professor Lancaster was saying, is that in the story that you heard Edith describe them mutilating John Carter's body and then attaching it to a vehicle and dragging it down the business section the Black business section of the community. And there are accounts of that type of thing happening to strike fear, to also to cripple the community financially in a way that we know you're thriving, we know you're surviving, you're not just surviving, you're thriving, you're doing well. Some of your businesses are doing better. And so we do this thing and we show you what we will do to you if you continue. That's something that she described. We also have the Tulsa race massacre of Greenwood, and it being the Black Wall Street at that time, and they were thriving communities that were independent and were just trying to live and grow, and so there is this level of jealousy in the ways that these people, our communities, just really want to be left alone with equity, not just equality, but with equity, and to be able to live the same type of American dream that everyone else had. So there are several accounts throughout history, if you read and study, that the root of it was because that community was independent and thriving.
Unfortunately, we need to move on in the program for this evening. I want to thank the panelists for their comments. A lot more that we could explore. Unfortunately, we don't have the time for that. I'm going to turn things over to our facilitators for the next part of the discussion.
Well, there's another question. I don't know if you can still take it from Margot.
Yeah, there is a question. Sorry, I didn't see it.
Yeah, I saw it, but.
Can you speak briefly on the premise of how the people who were lynched were fully aware that they were murdering a human, not dehumanizing? Can you speak briefly on the premise of how the people who lynched were fully aware they were murdering a human, not dehumanizing?
Actually, there's a whole chapter on this in my book, American Atrocity, but you know, the actions they are perpetrating are to dehumanize. You know, we think dehumanization is a necessary step in order to perpetrate this. They recognize the person as human because only a human can be a competitor, a rival. You know, so what they are doing is murdering the person, you know, and often defacing in order to make that person a thing. Yeah, they're aware that this is a person. Otherwise, you know, I'm thinking of you know, the number of times that, you know, we do hear that many lynchings occurred due to a suspicion or a report that a Black man had raped a white woman. But I've actually found a number of lynchings that even the newspapers acknowledge occurred due to a consensual relationship, you know, or even a marriage. You know, a Black man and white woman, you know, run away and elope. And, you know, that they recognize that these people are human. They wouldn't be threatened by an animal, you know. An animal couldn't compete for your job or for the affections of some woman close to you. They know these are human. That's part of the reason for a lot of the torture that precedes the execution. You know, people who the sort of sadists who torture animals, you know, they torture specific animals, you know, because they enjoy that reaction of fear and pain. You know, someone doesn't torture grasshoppers, for example. So they're torturing someone they recognize as human and capable of feeling pain, capable of feeling shame. That's just it. They're not operating under, you know, misconception. They know perfectly well what they're doing.
Since, guys, you brought up your book, American Atrocities, I just want to let everyone know, both here in this room and on Zoom, that you will receive a free copy of that book. All you have to do is email me your mailing address and the book will arrive before the end of the month. My email address is APJMM2019@gmail.com. That's APJMM2019@gmail.com. Email me your mailing location and we will send the book to you, both the people in the room and the people on Zoom. George, you brought up what can be done. I'll give you two things that can be done. I just recently wrote a bill to finally exonerate the 122 Black men who were wrongfully convicted and imprisoned as a result of the Elaine Race Massacre. And I need public support in order to get this legislature to pass it and this governor to sign it. So you have my contact information because we need you to be contacting your legislators and the governor to say, let's exonerate those 122 Black men that were wrongfully convicted and wrongfully imprisoned. Second thing that you can do, this radio play mentioned my great uncle, Lonnie Dixon, and what happened in 1927 with the John Carter lynching at 9th and Broadway. The 100-year observance is coming up in 4 years. So we've already begun the steps to putting together a committee to properly observe that in a way where it gives dignity to those that were victimized as a result of this heinous mob rule that happened. So again, we need the public to support this because we need the city of Little Rock and the state of Arkansas to pay for it. So those are two things that you can do. You have my email address, contact me, and let's get these two balls rolling.
We'll move on to the next. Next, we're going to have a more interactive group discussion. What we want to do is rearrange our chairs in a circle here in the front. And everyone can face each other. I might suggest that we leave a little gap so that no one's back is to the people on Zoom. They can see us, so we can see that. We'll just do that here.
I would say,
And then we'll leave this there. Yeah. See.
No, yeah, no, let me.
Did we get enough chance?
Yeah. We give people who are here live a few more minutes. We have some delicious snacks in the self-care table. So as soon as everyone here live gets settled, we'll begin in about 30 seconds.
Water right now. No, don't worry.
Thank you for coming. We'll let us know how you want.
Yeah. Thanks for your patience. We'll go ahead and begin. Thank you to the panel, to Dr. Wiebelhaus-Brahm. We're going to have time for our participants to share their views. Welcome everyone to the participant discussion part of our event. Again, I'm Summer. This is Sky. And we'll be guiding the discussion this evening in this room. In the Zoom session, we have Babatunde guiding the discussion, and we'll have some time to reflect on what we've seen and heard this evening. So we're going to take turns going around in the circle one at a time. When it's your turn, please state your name and then address the following question. Thinking about what we've seen and heard today, what actions could we take individually or collectively to advance justice? And I'm gonna start over here, if you will begin, to answer that question. If you don't wish to share, please feel free to pass by saying, "I'll pass." And please limit your sharing to only 2 minutes. We're gonna observe the other touchstones. Those touchstones are written in your handout. In the room, the question that we're discussing is also written on the back of your handout, on the opposite of the touchstones. In the Zoom session, participants will have the link to the touchstones in the chat. So we're gonna hear from 2 participants in this room, and then 2 participants in the Zoom session, then 2 participants in the room, and then 2 participants in the Zoom session. And on until as many people as possible have a chance to share in the time that we have left available. Would you like to start?
Since I've already done this, I will pass.
I feel like I should let someone else share as well.
Okay, I'll start. My name is Stephanie Vestal. So actions individually, collectively to advance justice. I think a big thing that I can do is help to spread knowledge and just a lot of people in my life that are a little ignorant of the history of lynching and repercussions, and I think I could share more of what I've learned today and what I know about the past for people, just to bring more knowledge. And I think even just thinking about some of the like remnants of lynching, I think statues and monuments of that still exist in places that are painful memories of the past. I think just constantly reminding people of that and talking about it and helping to bring awareness about that is something that I know I could do.
Radical love and radical empathy in our interactive lives, personal as well as our professions. For instance, my profession, education, we need to operate as educators with a sense of radical love and radical empathy, with the community drawing the strengths of our community and the strengths of our students as part of our curriculum. Radical love for our students, radical empathy, and always look to build up, but we cannot shy away from difficulties. We cannot shy away from looking to the future, critically looking at how we can be changing.
And if you pause right there, we're gonna move to the online. Babatunde, if you can get 2 people to share.
Thank you. I've already listed the names of some of the participants that are still here. So we'll be listening to Almas Khan first, then followed by Uriel Dell coming. So the names are listed in the chat box. Please just see where your name is and then you talk. So let's listen to Almas Khan for his own comment. Please, if you don't want to share, you can just say I'll pass and then we'll move to the next person. Oh, okay. I think we've lost him. Okay, the next person, the first 2 on the list are no more there. So Becky G, if you'll be willing to share, please, can you unmute yourself and share your experience with us or your view?
Can you hear me?
Okay, yes. If Becky G, you're talking, yes, please. Okay, please. Yeah. You have the floor.
I was bothered, and I believe we just need to keep speaking the truth. When people say that happened a long time ago, it's not happening anymore, we have to keep reminding them and keep telling them, no, it's still happening and we still have to make corrections. And the truth has to be taught because, well, It's the truth. And we can't have people objecting to learning it because it makes them feel bad. We just have to face the truth. Don't feel bad. It's what happened. So we need to face it, and we need to carry on and learn and do better. That's all.
Thank you, Becky. Can we listen to Evelyn?
Good evening.
Good evening. Please, you have the floor.
I think watching the video, I was in tears most of the time because last week I took my kid to school in Jackson, Mississippi, and every time I drive from Jackson, Mississippi to Little Rock, I am overwhelmed by the trees and the stories those trees probably can tell, and the fields and the stories those fields can tell, because it's extremely rural the way that I go. And I think that by sharing those testimonies and sharing anecdotes and sharing history and learning more, if we keep learning more and we keep opening up knowledge and are willing to share and get involved in some of your local organizations that are justice fighters, not just, marching in the street, but sometimes it just takes money. It may take somebody that needs to make phone calls to bring awareness. I'm a part of the NAACP, and we have no restrictions on who can join and pick up the mantle and fight for justice. So if we keep learning and sharing and correcting things that we hear are incorrect, I think that's how we promote justice.
Thank you. After the in-person audience have spoken, we'll come back to Kenzie and Margot. Over to you, Summer.
Awesome. Thank you, Babatunde. If you can continue over here live. Is it on? It's on.
Oh, okay. So, well, as an artist and individual, I like to use art with the community, bringing other established artists together sometimes to bring different perspectives on social justice issues and such. I also like to work with the community and let them, just people walk up and be part of it to where they can put their message in the art. I'm doing it on 7th Street. I'm doing it in some other projects. So I think art is a very powerful way to reach topics that some people, they might not come to an event like this, but they'll come to an art event, and then you get to tell the story that way. They'll walk down the streets, the murals, so that's what I use.
I think there are 3 arenas where we need to be active, summarized by the individual, the community, and institutions. Individually, I think we need to realize that racial prejudice and racism are fundamentally spiritual diseases, and they require a spiritual solution. A part of which is each of us as individuals searching our own hearts for where vestiges of superiority or inferiority, prejudice reside, and root them out, because that's our fundamental contribution to a better world, making ourselves a better person. But I think we have a second moral responsibility, and that is to contribute to improving the world that we're a part of. And this is where the other 2 arenas come in. But within the personal realm, I think we have a wonderful opportunity to create a welcoming environment within our homes, encouraging our children to make friends with people who are different, and inviting them home to play, getting to know their parents, visiting their parents, going to their faith communities. It's hard to be prejudiced towards someone you consider a friend. So that very personal work of engagement and encouragement of children, I think, is fundamental. Now, within community, finding allies, like-minded souls, people ready to roll up their sleeves and do things, coming together socially, economically, politically, to find ways to take collective action to move forward. And then institutionally, it has to do with speaking truth to power, engaging in discourse, and finding language that promotes unity and oneness rather than otherness. And I don't want to take up too much time, so I'll leave it at that.
It's back to you, Babatunde.
Yes, thank you. Now we'll listen to Margot and Sharon. Margot, you have the floor.
Am I heard? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay. I really enjoyed and agree with everything everyone said. I think we have to first examine our own hearts. I really feel strongly that it starts with our human hearts and from our spiritual nature to recognize how we've lived our lives under the spell of lies and be educated and be have enough courage to get out and be educated on the very, very painful things and just share that with one another. And I'm doing some classes for some folks in the church, and just the fact that they chose to step up and take the class and begin the discussion, I think is really progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Can we hear from Sharon, please?
I'd like to pass.
Okay, thank you. What about Tresena? Are you willing to share with us, or you rather pass?
Yes, I would like to share. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, everyone. I have enjoyed this conversation tonight. And I would just like to offer, I believe it was Professor Guy Lancaster that said, find your niche. And so one of the things that I've done in advancing justice, I was a middle school educator. And one of the things that I saw in education, and you guys may have heard this term, is the school to prison pipeline. And one of the things that we have to recognize is that when you have Black and Brown children in communities where they have been affected generationally, some of their behavior is actually trauma responses. They've been triggered, and it's not always a behavior issue. There's some other things going on, but what we have done has we've identified them in the wrong way. So the work that I'm doing here in my community is I've joined with our past juvenile justice judge who had been tasked by the state of Indiana to find out why there were a large disproportionate number of African-American youth in the juvenile justice system. So I'm working with individuals. We have also come together to do a book club, to read some of the latest books on racial equity and racism and advancing justice. And so this work is where I have found my niche as an educator, and then also as a person that's just concerned about what I'm seeing in those high disproportionate numbers in the educational system, and then how that translates into the larger criminal justice system where we see a disproportionate number. So advancing justice in that area is where I found my niche. And we're doing work in our community that I'm absolutely proud of. And I'm grateful to be a part of this conversation here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. Over to you, Summer, for the physical audience.
Please continue, state your name as well.
Hi. Okay, I'm Jennifer Reimer, and I'm his wife, and I ditto him. Everything he said was absolutely perfect. I'd like to step at one more line and say that reflects three things that I believe strongly in, which are knowledge, volition, and action. First, you have to understand, then you have to be willing to do something, and then you have to do it in order to make changes. And for me, this is very personal. I just could reflect each day if there's something I can do or didn't do, or something I could do better, that I might turn this around. But when this last speaker, that was beautiful, by the way, I'm so glad there's a lot of educators here because that's where it's going to really make a difference. But when I hear the word trigger, I hear survival primal scream. So my personal feeling is that each of us who have this knowledge need to triple our compassion, need to really find it deep within ourselves to understand, to empathize, to try and walk along, accompany, and do what we can, voice to power, and to others around us in the neighborhood. I think it's really important. And with that, I pass.
My name is Yvonne Wiebelhaus-Brahm, and Eric's my husband. On an individual and personal level, I really strive. We have 2 teen boys in 8th and 9th grade. And so I really strive to talk with them about racism and how it can crop up in their lives. And they talk to me about things that they hear or see at school. But in particular, you know, I stress to them that when you're with your friends, because they have friends who are Black and white and brown, and I say, if they're in trouble or if something happens, you need to stick with them. You need, you know, don't worry about getting in trouble, but you guys need to stick together as a group, whether that's at school events like meets so that no one person can get picked off, or, you know, just in general, you don't leave them alone, but you should always stick to your group.
And Babatunde, it's actually, we are going to pause right here. It's actually time to wrap up. We're nearing 9 o'clock. And unless, does anyone else have anything pertinent to say or that they really want to get off their chest? But okay, all right, go for it.
Hi, my name is Chelsea Luckett. I feel like one way to advance justice is to like either have a show or some type of platform that can give kind of like sort of like an infomercial that educates and teaches laws and understand the breakdown and how to address issues, and where it can be like an open conversation for everyone to speak on, especially when schools are trying to not talk about it. And then the question I like to leave is, what is the best way to have a conversation about the transition of people within to advance collectively, especially for those who have different views of race? Thank you.
My name is Juma here, and I feel like for the young people first, I would say, give yourself personal projects to help your community around you, whether that be with the children or with the elders or with your own peers. We are in the position now because of where we are in society to be able to really use and leverage our privilege, as well as everybody else, but leverage our privilege as to what we may know and what we know we can do to make a change. Also, for people that are white, what are some ways, or really changing the viewpoint around being an ally more so as someone who is an abolitionist, putting yourself in the way, leveraging your privilege by putting yourself in quote unquote harm's way when you see it fit to do so. Because we're not in a time period of needing allies. We need people who see the truth and are willing to live that truth and speak up with that truth. So yeah, and that was just overall leveraging your privilege.
Awesome. So thank you all very, very much for sharing. I'm going to read a closing reading. This is from Angela Davis. Freedom is a constant struggle. Ferguson, Palestine, and the foundations of a movement. Our histories never unfold in isolation. We cannot truly tell what we consider to be our own histories without knowing other stories. And often we discover that those other stories are actually our own stories. So thank you very, very much for participating in today's discussion. Now Dr. Wiebelhaus-Brahm has some closing remarks.
I thank everyone for coming. And as someone who's looked at how studied societies around the world have to deal with their pasts, I'm struck by a quote from a Faulkner novel that the past isn't, like to paraphrase it, the past isn't even the past because it's with us. And it will continue to be with us. So we need to expect to continue to reflect on it, how it affects our societies today. I'm really enthused with the suggestions that people have to invoke ideas from a good friend of mine, Joanna Quinn, if you're interested in looking up her research. She talks about the importance of developing thin sympathy for other groups. She studies how societies build peace after conflict, and so getting this basic knowledge about what happened and what happened from other people's perspectives is an incredibly powerful first step to think more deeply about the pursuit of justice more on a community or societal level. I'll leave it at that. I don't remember who we're going to next.
We're going to clear use.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you all very much for coming. I appreciate you. Thank you to the young minds right here in the corner, Rima, Elsie, and Chelsea. I appreciate you. They are Greg, Trent, all the young ones. I will say that the investment in their lives and in our children to continue this work is very important. So we definitely want to make sure that we're touching and reaching them, and we are inclusive of them in the work that we do. Again, thank you to all of the partners and everyone in this room and those who are on the live, to the Clinton School facilitators, public service facilitators. We appreciate you. Hold on, I already cracked my phone. Sky, thank you for facilitating again. Dr. Richards, as always, thank you so much. Martha, I just met Martha. She's the director here, the new director here at the UA Little Rock. Thank you so much. She's such a beautiful person, and I look forward to working with you again. And Dr. Hume. Dr. Hume, thank you so much. And everyone else, Christine, everyone else, thank you so much for coming. And I'm going to pass it to Kwame. I'm going to pass it to Kwame because he has some information about this mural here and then Civic Saturday.
Thank you. And it was just whispered in my ear how great this event was. So hopefully this is the first of we'll be talking. Before you leave, I encourage you to check out the mural that's through these doors over here. The title of the mural is The Struggle in the South. And it's a mural that was created at Commonwealth College in Mena, Arkansas, just a few years after the Lane Race Massacre. And it depicts the struggle of Black people and the working class here in Arkansas. So, and there is a graphic image of a lynching in that mural. So definitely check it out. And that's all, that mural is also on the front of our website, first page, www.apjmm.org. And I'm saying that for the people that are still on the Zoom, www.apjmm.org. You'll be able to see the mural as well. Also, Civic Saturday. Okay, so here in Arkansas, we observe the National Day of Racial Healing with events throughout the week of the National Day of Racial Healing, which is the Tuesday after Martin Luther King Day. And we still have events tomorrow, and we still have events on Saturday and Sunday. So definitely go to that website to look at the schedule of events. One of the major events that is going to be happening is this Saturday at the State Capitol between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. We will have the inaugural Civic Saturday gathering here in the state of Arkansas. And basically what that gathering is about, it is about civic engagement. So we talked about racial healing all week. Now let's get civically engaged and do something about it. That's what that is all about. We encourage all of you here to participate, all of you that are on the Zoom. There will be a live Zoom, a live YouTube and Facebook where you can watch from wherever you are at. And did I say everything that I was instructed? Okay, that's my wife.
It's not boring. It's not boring.
Yes.
In line with announcements of these Day of Racial Healing events, if you're interested in exploring a spiritual approach to healing racism, Sunday morning at 11, we'll have a virtual devotional to explore the spiritual nature of racial healing, and it's in the calendar of events.
Thank you. And is this where I turn it over to Christine?
Hi. Yes.
Christine, will you please close us out and send us home?
Sure.
Go home.
Thank you guys so much, everybody, for coming out and just being part of this. So we have open mic night Friday night at UA Little Rock. Just saying, if you know anybody interested in performing, send them our way. Otherwise, thank you guys for everything and have a good night.
Is your mobile?
I think so, yes.
Yes, it is.